A wide cinematic shot of an old train station at night, flickering yellow lights casting pools of warm glow on cracked wooden floors, empty benches stretching into shadow, cold mist drifting through broken window panes, a sense of deep abandonment and hollow silence, shot from a low angle emphasizing the vast emptiness of the hall. Realistic weathered textures on every surface, dark blue night sky visible through high windows. Close-up of a young woman's face in profile, Era, dim yellow station light catching the edge of her cheekbone, tired eyes red at the corners but holding back tears, dark loose hair framing her pale face, expression carrying quiet devastation and stubborn dignity. Shallow depth of field blurring the empty benches behind her, cool tones dominating the frame. Full-body cinematic shot of Era standing near a worn wooden bench, a thin coat pulled tight around her shoulders, one hand resting on a small battered suitcase beside her feet, posture slightly hunched against the cold, head bowed, dust motes floating slowly in the weak overhead light, the station stretching dark and empty behind her, emotional weight heavy in every detail of her stillness. Close-up of Era's hands pale and cold, fingers lightly gripping the edge of a folded letter, edges of the paper worn from repeated handling, the light from above catching the creases in the paper, a faint ink signature barely visible at the bottom. Shallow focus on her knuckles, the wood grain visible just beneath. Cinematic over-the-shoulder shot from behind Era looking through the station's tall window into the dark street. Bare trees swaying slightly in night wind, a single lamppost flickering at the edge of the road, cold mist drifting across the empty pavement, Era's thin reflected silhouette ghosted faintly in the glass. Dramatic wide shot of a modest house with a closed front door, warm light glowing from within, a woman standing in the doorway with rigid posture and hard, cold eyes, looking down at a figure on the step. The contrast between the inner warmth and the cold rejection written across her expression. Late afternoon amber light casting sharp shadows across the porch, shutters weathered and worn. Extreme close-up of Era's eyes absorbing the words "You are not what we expected," tears not yet fallen but eyes glistening under harsh porch light, lips pressed together in a controlled line, dust drifting across the background, emotional devastation masked behind fierce restraint, backlighting creating a thin halo around her dark hair. Cinematic medium shot of Era walking away from the house down a narrow dirt road, back to camera, suitcase in hand, shoulders rigid but somehow fragile, long shadows cast by the low late-day sun stretching before her across the dusty path, dry scrub grass lining the roadside, the house door shut firmly in the far background. Wide night shot of the station exterior under a vast dark sky, a single dirty light burning above the entrance, cold wind moving dust along the platform edge, no trains in sight, the building looking like it has been forgotten by the world. Cinematic stillness, low angle showing the depth of the empty platform stretching into darkness. Medium close-up of Era sitting alone on the wooden station bench, hands folded in her lap, eyes staring at nothing, the overhead light casting deep shadows under her eyes and along her jaw, the letter visible folded inside her partly open suitcase beside her, the silence around her feeling physical, cool blue tones mixing with the yellow of the single bulb above. Close-up of Era's jaw tightening as she refuses to cry, a single tear catching the light just at the inner corner of her eye before she blinks it away. Chin lifted slightly in quiet defiance, the empty station behind her blurred into soft darkness, intimate and emotionally raw, cinematic shallow depth of field. Wide cinematic shot of the station entrance as a tall man fills the doorway, silhouetted against the cold night outside, long brown coat resting over broad shoulders, a weathered cowboy hat casting his face in shadow, boots planted firmly, one hand at his side, the flickering station lights outlining his frame against the dark, low dramatic angle making him feel both imposing and calm. Medium shot of Rowan walking across the cracked station floor, his boots striking the tiles with steady, measured rhythm, the sound implied in the visual weight of each step, worn brown coat moving slightly with his gait, face partially shadowed by his hat brim, eyes scanning the empty hall with the calm of a man who has seen real hardship, cinematic tracking feel. Close-up of Rowan's boots on the station floor, leather worn but cared for, heel strikes leaving brief impressions in the faint dust on the tile, the cracked floor surface visible in sharp detail, dramatic contrast between the darkness of the leather and the pale floor, motion slightly implied in the composition. Over-the-shoulder shot from Rowan's perspective looking across the station toward Era, who sits small and still on the far bench, her thin coat catching the yellow overhead light, the vast empty floor between them emphasizing isolation, dust particles visible in the shaft of light above her, cinematic wide focal length making the distance feel significant. Close-up of Era's eyes flicking upward to meet Rowan's gaze for one sharp instant before she quickly looks away, the reaction fast but emotionally loaded, light catching the dark of her irises, eyebrows slightly drawn, expression caught between wariness and surprise, background soft and dark. Medium shot of Rowan stopping a few feet from Era's bench, posture relaxed but grounded, one hand resting at his side, hat still shading his upper face, the flickering light above throwing shifting shadows on his coat and jaw, calm presence filling the frame. Era visible at the edge of the shot, still looking down. An intimate two-shot, Rowan standing slightly above Era, who remains seated, the gap between them carrying both distance and tension, warm yellow station light falling between them. Rowan's expression gentle and unreadable, Era's posture guarded, the empty station benches receding into dark blur behind them, shallow depth of field. Close-up of Rowan's face partially shadowed by his hat brim, speaking quietly, deep-set eyes steady and direct, jaw relaxed, no urgency in his expression, the kind of face shaped by years of open land and hard weather, lantern light catching the line of his cheekbone and the corner of his mouth. Close-up of Era's lips forming the quiet words, "The train left," her eyes still cast slightly downward, the admission carrying the weight of everything she cannot say. The station light above making her skin look cool and pale, a strand of dark hair resting against her jaw, the empty bench beside her faintly visible. Medium shot of Rowan glancing toward Era's small suitcase beside the bench, his eyes moving with quiet perception rather than intrusion, the worn latches and scuffed corners of the bag telling their own story. Light falling softly across the leather, Rowan's expression showing understanding without pity. Close-up of Rowan's mouth as he says, "My name is Rowan Hale," steady and unhurried, the words offered like a handshake, jaw defined and calm, no performance in the gesture, dark stubble catching the faint overhead light, the rest of his face softening slightly into something approachable. Medium shot of both figures in the station, Era seated and Rowan standing near the pillar, neither speaking, the silence between them rendered visible by the vast empty space of the hall, the flickering light above pulsing faintly, cold air implied by the slight tenseness in Era's shoulders, a moment suspended before something changes. Wide cinematic shot capturing the station interior from a high angle, Rowan leaning against the wooden pillar, Era on the bench below, the cracked floor stretching away from them in all directions, the single overhead light creating a circle of warmth around the two figures against the surrounding darkness, their smallness against the empty space communicated isolation and an unexpected connection forming. Close-up of Era's throat as she swallows before answering Rowan, the small involuntary motion catching the light, her jaw tightening slightly, collar of her thin coat just visible at the bottom of frame. The moment suggests the emotional cost of admitting the truth out loud. Cinematic medium shot of two small girls bursting through the station doorway, twin sisters with wild brown hair and wide bright eyes, small feet hitting the floor running, matching simple dresses slightly rumpled from sleep, their energy and warmth exploding into the cold empty station like light through a cracked door. Close-up of the twins' faces as they search the station hall, eyes wide and alive with that specific child brightness that knows no caution, cheeks flushed from the cold outside, one girl slightly ahead of the other, their expressions full of uncomplicated joy and urgency. Cinematic low-angle shot looking up as Rowan drops to one knee, arms opening, the two twins rushing into him, the three figures caught mid-embrace, the overhead light creating a warm halo above them, Rowan's coat spreading around the girls as they press into him, the station's cold emptiness receding behind this pocket of warmth.
Close-up of Rowan's face as he laughs softly with his daughters, the laugh honest and deep, the hardness briefly lifting from his expression, laugh lines visible at the corners of his eyes, one daughter's hair pressed against his cheek, the light warm and close, the most human moment he has shown. Medium shot of Ara watching the reunion from the bench, her hands still folded in her lap, but her posture subtly shifted, the guarded tension in her shoulders easing by a fraction, her expression quiet and unguarded for a single instant, something soft moving across her face at the sight of the father and daughters together. Close-up of Mira's eyes finding Ara across the station, the child's gaze direct and unashamed in the way only children look at people, curious and open, a slight tilt to her small head, the station light catching the bright dark of her irises, the moment of recognition before she whispers her observation. Medium shot of Sina stepping forward toward Ara with brave small steps, chin slightly up, arms relaxed at her sides, an instinctive confidence in her tiny frame, the station floor stretching large around her small figure, Ara watching from the bench with wide, uncertain eyes, the contrast between the child's fearlessness and the woman's wariness quietly moving. Close-up of Sina's eyes looking up at Ara and saying, "Hello," her voice implied in the parting of her small lips, eyes completely unguarded, a faint smile beginning, cheeks still round with childhood, the empty hall blurring away behind her into soft, dark bokeh. Close-up of Ara's face reacting to the child's greeting with genuine surprise, eyebrows lifting slightly, the tight, careful mask she wears cracking open for just a moment, the ghost of a real smile touching the corner of her lips for the first time, overhead light catching the shimmer of unshed tears still present in her eyes. Wide cinematic shot from outside the station windows looking in, the two small figures of the twins and the seated figure of Ara visible through the dirty glass, Rowan standing a few steps behind, the cold, dark street in the foreground, mist drifting past the window, the interior warmth of the light creating a tableau that looks both intimate and fragile. Medium shot of Rowan stepping forward toward the bench again, one hand resting lightly against the pillar, his body language calm and deliberate, eyes steady on Ara, the twins visible in the background near the doorway, watching with clasped hands, the weight of what is about to be said felt before the words arrive. Extreme close-up of Rowan's eyes in the moment before he speaks the words, "My twins need a mother like you," dark and certain, no flicker of doubt in them, light from the station overhead casting shadows beneath his brow, the emotional gravity of the statement contained entirely in the steadiness of his gaze. Close-up of Ara's face in the instant she hears those words, frozen mid-breath, eyes slightly widened, lips parted, the letter still visible just inside the open suitcase at the edge of the frame, the look of someone whose mind has stopped and whose heart has not yet caught up. Shallow depth of field pulling everything else out of focus. Medium shot of Ara and Rowan face to face with several feet between them, Ara having slowly lifted her head to look at him fully, Rowan standing straight and still, his hat in hand now revealing his full expression, serious and unperforming, the space between them charged with the enormity of what has just been said. Close-up of Ara's hands in her lap, fingers tightening slightly against each other, the knuckles whitening just barely, the emotional storm contained in this small involuntary motion, the frayed edge of her coat sleeve just visible, the old wood of the bench beneath her. Medium shot of Rowan looking toward his daughters as he says, "Sometimes you do not need long to know what kind of heart a person carries."
his profile to camera, expression thoughtful and honest, the twins a soft blur in the background, the station light catching the line of his jaw and the shadow under his hat, the words landing in the silence like something true. Close-up of the twins whispering to each other near the station doorway, their heads close together, eyes darting toward Ara with undisguised hope, small fingers intertwined, expressions full of that specific child earnestness that is entirely without strategy, cold night air drifting in from behind them. Cinematic wide shot of Ara standing slowly from the bench, her thin figure rising against the large dark space of the station interior, Rowan a few steps away, watching, the twins at the far end visible and still, the flickering overhead light casting long, wavering shadows across the floor, the visual weight of the decision she is making felt in every inch of the composition. Medium shot of Ara walking slowly toward the twins, her small suitcase left behind on the bench, her steps careful and slightly uncertain, the girl's expressions brightening as she approaches, Rowan watching from behind with quiet intensity, the floor reflecting the overhead light in long golden streaks. Low-angle close-up of Ara kneeling slightly to meet the twins at eye level, her coat falling around her, face now level with the girl's, a cautious warmth beginning to show in her expression, the twins leaning slightly forward with curiosity, the ceiling lights above them creating a soft halo across all three figures. Close-up of Sina's face asking the twins, "Why are you here?" completely without guile, eyes open and honest, a slight frown of genuine bewilderment on her small face, the question carrying a philosophical weight the child does not realize, Ara's shoulder visible at the edge of the frame. Intimate two-shot of Mira and Sina standing together listening to Ara, their faces turned up to her with complete attention, the station's cold emptiness invisible behind their warmth, one girl's hand touching the other's arm without thinking, the instinctive closeness of twins creating its own small world. Medium close-up of Ara answering the twins, her voice implied in the soft set of her lips, expression showing the effort of forming words that do not give too much away, but her eyes showing something real has been reached, the station light warm and close around the small group. Cinematic over-the-shoulder shot from behind the twins looking up to Ara, her face framed by the station light above, expression shifting between guardedness and genuine warmth as she speaks to the children, the station interior stretching back behind her into soft darkness, the moment intimate and slightly elevated. Close-up of Ara laughing softly at something the twins say, a real, unguarded laugh breaking briefly through, her head tilting slightly, eyes crinkling at the corners, the first completely undefended expression she has worn all night, light catching the wet shine still present in her eyes from earlier tears, now fading.
Medium shot of Rowan standing apart, arms folded loosely, watching Ara with the twins, his expression quiet and private, something in his eyes softening beyond what he allows in words, the station behind him dark, the light pooling on his face and the figures before him, a man observing a moment that means more than he will say aloud. Wide cinematic shot of the station interior at its most intimate, Ara and the twins in the center, in a small circle of light, Rowan nearby like a quiet sentinel, the vast empty hall surrounding them on all sides, the contrast between the warmth of their small group and the darkness of the abandoned space around them, deeply cinematic. Close-up of the twins' excited faces as they talk about horses, eyes lighting up, hands beginning to gesture, one girl's hair falling across her forehead as she speaks, the pure, uncomplicated joy of children talking about what they love, station lights catching the animation in their expressions. Medium shot from outside the station doorway looking in at the group, cold night and mist in the foreground, the four figures visible through the entrance, framed by the weathered wooden door arch, the scene inside looking warm and impossibly fragile, a visual of belonging glimpsed from the outside.
Wide cinematic shot of the station exterior in deep night, the truck parked at the side road, cold stars beginning to appear in breaks between clouds, the old building silhouetted against the dark sky, the first suggestion that something is about to move forward, a visual breath before departure. Close-up of Rowan opening the passenger door of the black truck for Ada, his hand on the door handle, expression neutral but eyes attentive, the cold night air visible in the faint mist of his breath, the truck's interior light casting a warm rectangle onto the dark ground. Close-up of Ada's feet on the step of the truck, one foot inside and one outside, the moment of crossing a threshold rendered literally in this physical pause, the worn sole of her shoe catching the interior light, the gravel and dust of the station road visible below. Medium shot of Ada settling into the passenger seat, her suitcase held against her knees, posture still slightly uncertain, but her face turned toward the window with something new in it, the interior light warm and close, the windshield dark with the night beyond. Over-the-shoulder shot from behind the twins in the back seat, looking through the windshield as Rowan drives, the road ahead lit only by the headlights, dark fields spreading away on either side, the two small heads visible below Ada and Rowan's shoulders, the family composition of the image quietly suggesting what might be possible. Wide cinematic shot from outside the moving truck, the vehicle small against the vast dark landscape, a single line of light from the headlights cutting through the darkness, stars emerging fully overhead, dry scrub grass at the roadside bending in the night wind, the immensity of the open land surrounding the tiny moving vehicle. Close-up of Ada's face looking out the passenger window, her expression no longer closed, something quieter and more open replacing the pain of earlier. The dark fields passing reflected softly in the glass, her reflection transparent over the moving landscape, hair slightly loose around her face. Close-up of one twin's sleeping face pressed against the other's shoulder, mouth slightly open, lashes resting against cheek, completely surrendered to sleep the way only safe children sleep, the worn fabric of the back seat visible, warm tones from the dashlight barely touching them. Medium shot of Rowan driving, one hand on the wheel, the other resting near the gear shift, face lit faintly by the dashboard glow, expression calm and steady, the kind of man most comfortable in motion across open land, the night outside the windshield stretching wide and dark ahead. Close-up of Ada's eyes watching the sleeping twins in the back seat through the rear-view mirror, her expression wholly unguarded now, something in her chest visibly unlocking, the small dim reflection of the girls in the mirror catching just enough light to be clearly present. Cinematic shot of the wooden ranch gate appearing in the headlights, worn planks and hand-painted letters at the top, Rowan stepping out to push it open, his figure briefly illuminated by the headlights, long coat moving in the night wind, the road beyond disappearing into deeper darkness toward the ranch. Wide cinematic establishing shot of the ranch at night, the sprawling wooden house with warm yellow lights in every window, large barns standing dark and solid beside it, the land wide and open beyond, horses barely visible as dark shapes in the far pasture, the sky above thick with stars, the scene feeling removed from the world and entirely self-contained. Medium shot of Rowan lifting a sleeping twin from the back seat, the child's arms going loosely around his neck in sleep, his expression shifting to pure tenderness as he adjusts his weight against his chest, the warm ranch house lights glowing warm behind them. Close-up of Ada carefully lifting the second sleeping twin, the small child settling naturally against her shoulder, small fingers curling against Ada's collar, the contact quiet and complete, Ada's expression showing something like wonder at the small weight trusting itself to her. Cinematic over-the-shoulder shot as Rowan and Ada carry the sleeping twins toward the lit house, their two figures side by side, each bearing a sleeping child, the warm window light growing closer with each step, the wide, dark ranch spreading away behind them, the image speaking without words. Interior medium shot of the kitchen as the door opens, Gideon looking up from his newspaper at the kitchen table, silver-haired and weathered, a large calloused hand resting on the table, eyes moving first to Rowan, then pausing on Ada with careful, measured assessment, warm lamplight filling the kitchen with amber tones. Close-up of Gideon's face as he studies Ada, expression giving nothing away easily, eyes sharp and experienced beneath heavy gray brows, a man who has learned to read people slowly and trust them even slower, the faint lines around his mouth suggesting years of both hardship and laughter. Cinematic interior shot of the twins' bedroom, walls covered with hand-drawn horses and crayon mountains in bright childish colors, two small beds side by side with patchwork quilts, moonlight coming through the curtain's edge, the room warm and deeply personal, a child's whole world contained in these four walls. Medium shot of Ada gently placing Senna in bed beside her sister, tucking the quilt carefully around both girls, her movements slow and instinctively gentle, the soft light from the hallway falling across her face, her expression showing something like tenderness she does not yet have a name for. Close-up of Ada's hand smoothing the quilt over one twin's shoulder, the tender and careful gesture, the small child's form completely still under the blanket, only the soft rise and fall of sleep breathing, Ada's worn coat sleeve at the edge of the frame, the intimacy of the moment private and profound. Medium shot of Rowan waiting in the hallway as Ada steps back out of the twins' bedroom, the two adults facing each other in the narrow corridor, the bedroom door behind her casting soft light, low, warm tones, quiet after the exertion of the night, something passing between them in the silence that words have not yet claimed. Cinematic kitchen interior, Gideon, Rowan, and Ada seated around the worn wooden table, 3 cups of tea steaming, the lamp above casting a warm circle of amber light, the large dark kitchen extending beyond into shadow, the scene suggesting the first fragile moment of something becoming a household, the window behind them showing a black and starlit sky. Close-up of the steaming cup of tea placed in front of Ada van Gideon's rough hand, the simple gesture carrying more welcome than any formal speech, the cup slightly chipped at the rim, warmth visible in the rising steam, Ada's fingers reaching slowly towards it.